Hi everybody, happy Monday. This is Umbria Above, and today we're going to talk about when, where, and why to go in Italy, because I know this is a big topic for a lot of people who are fascinated by Italy or already in love with Italy. I thought it would be really fun just to kick off very briefly with one of the reasons that people come to Italy, which is the food, the wine. I'll show you some of our favorites. So this is a white wine from the area. We only drink local wines because why even go as far as northern Italy when we have like amazing white and red wines in our area of Lattuca, this corner of Umbria, which is very similar to northern Lazio, southern Tuscany. So Frammento is a white wine from De Cugnano dei Barbi. We love it. We love all their whites. There are a lot of great producers of whites though, so it's not our only one, but we love it. And then because people ask me, well, what kind of pasta do you guys eat? Okay, so when we eat pasta asciutta, which is not fresh pasta, these are our favorite brands: Voiello, Rummo, and this one you probably all know, De Cecco. We also buy Barilla, but remember, only in Italy. Only in Italy, because Barilla in America is not any good. Remember, it's a different grain, whereas Barilla in Italy is made only from Italian grains. Okay, so that was just like a fun kickoff about food. Last thing I'll add about food, which I think is really interesting and a lot of people don't realize, garlic, aglio. Italians do use garlic, but not like Americans think they use garlic. So most Italians, when they cook with garlic, they put in the clove of garlic in the sauce or whatever they're making, and then they remove it before they serve the food. So when we go to Italian American restaurants in America, we find these hunks of garlic on our plates or in the sauce, or worse yet, because you can't pick it out, little tiny minced pieces of garlic all over the place. You don't find that in Italy like you find it in America. So I would say if you cook with garlic and you really want it to be authentic, cook with garlic, whole clove of garlic, which really perfumes the dish, and then remove it at the end and don't serve it. Italians are always kind of surprised when they see hunks of garlic in their food, which I know Americans are surprised. Well, isn't that what they do? No. So anyway, that's fun and interesting little kickoff about food. Okay, what we're gonna talk about the rest of this little chat is when, where, and why to go in Italy. Okay, so most visitors to Italy go to Rome, Florence, Venice, Tuscany, Amalfi Coast, Cinque Terre. Some go to Sicily. Some now go to Puglia, but those are the hot spots, right? And often you hear about people who, their second trip, their fifth trip, their 10th trip, Rome, Florence, Venice. And so what I'm here to talk about is where else you can go and when and why. So let's talk about this a little bit. Okay, so the three main reasons not to go to the hot spots, but we're going to talk about why you should go to the hot spots and when. The three main reasons not to go to those hot spots I just mentioned is you're going to have a ton of crowds. So I can't tell you how many friends and family we had this year who came and visited us, and we live halfway between Florence and Rome, and so they spent a little time in Rome and a little time in Florence, and this was not just one friend or friend, this was several groups of people who came to visit us. And they thought, well, you know, rightly so, it makes sense on a certain level. Yeah, we'll just spend a little time in Rome, a little time in Florence, go see Ellen and Arrigo. And they, without fail, all of them told us this summer, and that's one of the key words we're going to get into is summer. Ellen, we're never going back to Rome or Florence in the summer. Never. It was too hot, too crowded. I also heard I'm never going to an Italian city ever again too hot, too crowded, and too expensive. I mean, those are the three reasons. So let's talk a little bit about that and why. So everybody needs to go see Rome, Florence, Venice, the Amalfi Coast. You know, you need to see these things because they're jewels of culture and history. I was a Latin major for crimini's sake. So Rome was my favorite city in the world for many years, probably 20 years. And I lived in Rome for a few months. I've been to Rome hundreds of times, but also I have a very specific interest because I was a Latin major, Roman history, all that kind of stuff. That said, I think Rome is worth going to see more than once because it is very rich, very layered. There's no way you can do all of Rome even in your whole life. Like, I've been to Rome hundreds of times. I will never see all of Rome. It's impossible. But everybody needs to see it, just like everybody needs to see Venice. Everybody needs to see Florence for the art and the architecture. So I think it's important to go to those places. Now, when should you go to those places, right? Not in the summer. Not in the summer. Which I know for people with kids is hard. But the problem with summer is that all the things I just mentioned, it's way too hot. And now it's even hotter than it was 20 years ago. It's way too hot, it's way too crowded, and it's high season, so it's expensive. So the best time to go to the cities is September through April, avoiding Easter, so there's some considerations. But for me personally, and this was always true, January was like the best time to go to Rome or Florence. Because, yeah, there's still tourists, but you're not wedged in like sardines as you walk down the street or in the piazzas. And the airfare certainly is much less expensive. And it's not hot. And it's not cold either. So, Italians, we wear down jackets, but it's not cold like Boston. It's a temperate cold. So you're gonna want a heavy jacket, but if you have a heavy jacket, and you may not even need it actually, you may be able to go out depending on the month, even without a jacket, just a sweater, because the sun really is incredible here in the winter and the spring and the fall. It can feel like summer. And so I would definitely say that that off season in the cities is the best time. Even if you have kids, if you could swing a Christmas trip or, just the day after Christmas, maybe go to Italy, that's the best because you're going to be able to do so much that you would not be able to do. Like if it's so hot that, and we're talking about even in June, it's been so brutally hot. If you, let's say in June or July or August when it's so hot, you have a tour of the Forum and the Colosseum, you're going to be destroyed for the rest of the day. It's not like you're going to be able to do more stuff. You're going to be wiped out and want to just stay in air conditioning in the hotel to recuperate. Whereas in January, for example, which is a great month, I'm telling you, there's so much you can do because it's not cold like Boston, etc. You could do stuff all day long. You could go to museums. You could go for long walks. You cannot go for long walks in Italy in the summer, in the cities. It's just not realistic. And I know I'm going to get some people who say, well, I had, 3 gorgeous days in Florence in July. You might, but it's not a given. That's the danger, is that it is so hot that you might luck out and not get one of those hot days, or you might just ruin your vacation. So that's why I really suggest, especially for the cities, off season, because the cities, you have to see them, get your shopping in, go to the museums, because obviously shopping and museums are things, and a concentration of cultural monuments, etc., are something that exist in the cities that don't exist in a little tiny town outside, lost in the countryside somewhere. That little tiny town lost in the countryside has other enormous benefits. But that's why off-season for cities is what I really recommend. Okay, so yeah, and then the quote unquote real Italy. What's the real Italy? The real Italian lifestyle. I remember the first time I came to Italy, I was 15, and I saw my cousins, and I also had a school trip, and I visited some friends of our family, and I walked around, and this was March actually, and it just felt so authentic, like watching the Italians in the bars, hardly any tourists, watching how, the school kids, what their schedule was, and they would go for a pizza snack, around 5 o'clock in the afternoon to make it through to dinner. And I just remember how amazing that experience was to see the real Italy and not just, drop myself in July to like a tourist hotspot, which is a totally different experience. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about regarding why to check out other places is the food. So we talked a little bit about food right now. If you get off the beaten path, you're going to have a more authentic experience. So think about this. Between Florence and Rome, they have 20 million visitors in a year because, again, they're amazing places and you need to see them. But a city that needs to feed not only its own residents, but also 20 million visitors per year, they're not going to be able to give you all local, authentic produce. It's going to be industrially produced. So yeah, you'll probably get a taste of some local, authentic food. Like you'll get, maybe a little bit of fresh pasta. You might get some fresh local cheese, certainly local wine, but you're not going to have the experience that you would have in a smaller town where everybody is mostly eating locally produced. So I think that's another thing to keep in mind too. It's just the numbers preclude the possibility that everything you eat in a big city center is going to be local. It's not possible. The other thing I would say is that in the smaller places, you're going to have more genuine interactions. And by genuine, I don't always mean the best. I just mean genuine. So you're going to have great, beautiful interactions, and you might have someone who's rude to you, but it's real. It's genuine versus having someone who is fake nice to you because they know you're going to be spending your American dollar, which you get in those hot spots, unfortunately. So if you want genuine interactions, and again, it doesn't mean it's all bad. It means most of it's great, but it's genuine because they're not ruined by tourism. Right, so we talked about that, and I'm just looking at my notes. So I mentioned that I've been to Rome hundreds of times. My husband, who grew up an hour from Rome, this is not unusual. It's gonna shock you, but it's not unusual for Italians. My husband has never been in the Colosseum. He's Italian, grew up in Italy, was in the Italian army, worked in Italy his whole life, almost 50 years old, has never been in the Colosseum, and he's never been in the Vatican museums. And this is normal for a lot of Italians. Maybe not for a Roman. I'm sure there probably are Romans who've never been in the Colosseum, but I've definitely heard of a lot of Italians who've never been to Rome or never been to Venice or lived close to Rome but never went to the Colosseum. So there's a lot of that. There are a lot of Tuscans who've never been to Florence. And I know that's really surprising for a lot of expats because they think, oh, it's so cultural and everyone's so aware and appreciative of the culture. Sometimes, but not always. I know people from Tuscany who've never been to Florence. Like, they're Tuscan. By the way, I'm part Tuscan. My husband is half Tuscan. My grandmother had a Tuscan name. So I'm not anti-Tuscany because we are originally Tuscan in part, but I'm realistic about what Tuscany is today in 2022, which it's a place and it's also a marketing construct. So as long as you're aware of that when you spend your money, that's great. Like, I take my dog to the vet in Tuscany, or my dermatologist is in Tuscany. I have friends who want to go and see a certain restaurant in Tuscany. That's great, you know, as long as you're aware of what it is. Okay, so I think we talked about all of this. Let me just see, there are a couple more things quickly I wanted to cover. Oh yeah, on branching out. Like, so yeah, Ellen, you say to check out places other than Rome, Florence, Venice, Amalfi Coast, Cinque Terre. But how do I know where to go? Do I just like look at other regions? You can look at other regions. I would also recommend that you look at micro regions. So for example, just one example is here we are in Lattuca. Technically, Orvieto is in Umbria, but historically it was either a part of Tuscany or a part of the Papal lands. And so we here in Orvieto, and I've written a very long article about this, I know some of you have read, here in Orvieto, we are much more similar. In fact, the dialect we speak is of Viterbo, which is in Lazio, and similar to southern Tuscany. So we're not really Umbrian here, even though we are technically placed in the region of Umbria. So I think it's good to just get out and explore, you know, even read about which towns are appealing to you. Look at pictures on the internet and see, oh gosh, that looks so beautiful. I would love to be there in that town above the sea, and go check it out. Make a driving tour for yourself, either on the spot or create one in advance where you check out various towns. It doesn't have to be in the same region. You could cross into a few different regions, and that's going to be your really authentic experience of Italy that really helps you understand the people, and like the Italian people. Like, you know, think about it. The United States, there's a misconception among non-Americans, well, maybe even some Americans, that New York represents the United States. I think we all know New York does not. New York is a small portion of what is the United States. There's so much more to it. So don't fall into the same fallacy that Rome, Florence, Venice, Amalfi Coast define Italy, because they are also small pieces of a population of 60 million people. I think that's really key, is that the cities and the hot spots do not define a country or a people. So I think that's it for now. I'll leave you with a last thought that, similarly to how many Italians haven't seen all of Italy, I am Italian and American. I've lived in Italy for many years. I have not seen all of Italy. I will never see all of Italy. And I do always have a short list of towns. We have a short list of towns that we haven't seen that we'd like to see. And so someday I will share that, my most recent current list with you. One of the towns on there is Matera, which is a hotspot, but I'll be going off season. So that'll be for next time. Okay, thank you everybody. If you have any questions, anything you want me to cover in more detail, I'm always here for you. And signing off from Italy. Have a great Monday. Bye.